Bumpy Johnson now.
What down, family? It's your boy SNTV, back at y'all with another Chiraq Street Legends, and this episode is gonna be about none other than Bump J, aka the Chief of Chicago.
As they call me, Chief of Chicago. That's a strong, powerful statement. Ain't nobody just say that.
Bump J grew up on 103rd in Aberdeen, in a house in which he said that his whole family lived, outside of one of his uncles. His grandparents had 11 kids, and all of those 11 kids had like 4 or 5 kids of their own. Bump J said that he never even had a room of his own. He was so used to sleeping on the floor till he got to the point to where he actually liked sleeping on the floor. He grew up around his older cousins, and those were the guys that basically influenced and raised Bump J, taught Bump J the ways of the streets and everything that he knew. His father, who was a military man, was also in his life, but he wasn't around enough to really teach Bump J the ropes of life. Bump J ended up learning everything that he learned from his family members and the streets.
The 10 of their kids, all of them got 4 or 5 kids apiece. Like, I never had a room. The floor was my room.
Bump never really had a curfew. He could pretty much go and come as he pleased and do what he wanted to do, primarily because a lot of his family was involved in the streets. And when Bump J was out there in the streets, people in the neighborhood would make sure that Bump was okay. The more Bump stayed in the streets, the more Bump was beginning to become a product of his environment. He would actually go live with his dad for a little while, whom he said when he was younger, he thought was rich because every time he would pick him up, he would basically go and buy him anything that he wanted. When he went to live with his dad, he immediately started to dislike the situation when he figured out that his dad had rules. Rules was something that Bump wasn't used to, and Bump did everything he could to leave his dad's house. Eventually, his dad ended up sending him back. In hindsight, Bump said that he wished that he would have stayed with his dad because his dad was trying to install discipline. And at that age, that's exactly what he needed. But when he was younger, of course he didn't think like that. Bump J would begin to make the transition from a boy to a man when he would leave the house at only 13 years old. Over the years, Bump earned the nickname Buck Wild, as it really displayed how he got out in the streets. Bump would end up putting in most of his work on the east side.
Revolver, sir, so if a problem occur, we can handle that shit tonight.
As a solid four-corner hustler and one of the original BON members, Bump J held the east side down. Bump J was a very cool dude, but he was wild at the same time. He was very charismatic. Bump would network all throughout the city of Chicago. That's actually how the GOON squad got started. He ran an area called Grimeyville, which headquarters were on 71st and Chappelle. This is also the same area that Bump's brother Gino was killed. Gino was Bump's brother that was killed in 2001. He was actually one of the originators of the BON, or the Big Old Nigga Movement. According to Bump, Gino was sort of a hothead. He was treating people, robbing people, and beating people up. And one day when he was out of town, some Titanic stones had ended up killing his brother.
Yeah, this right here where they killed my brother. Right here. 57 Clyde. You got it. This is his crib right here. My grandmama window. First floor right here.
Niggas that did the shit, man, can't even come around no more.
Come around here no more. This our shit now.
This our shit right here. That's what's happening.
Half of them dead.
Right, and if you
Dead
see
or
one
shot
right
up.
now, they is over.
Yeah, this our shit now. This where he was killed at though, man.
When it came to rapping, Bump J was already raw as hell. But it seems like after his brother died, he turned it up a notch. I think he started to realize that he can use music as an outlet. Bump J would end up bringing the streets to the music industry. And in the early 2000s, he would set the city on fire.
Ain't no kings. Kings is dead or in jail. You know what I'm saying? So I was trying to tell a young punk. The kings is dead or in jail. People who actually control the streets of Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Larry Hoover, Jeff Ford, you know what I'm saying? Walter Weed. People like this, you know what I'm saying? Other than that, that king of Chicago shit dead. Once that door get open, it's gonna be over.
House around my neck, whip around my wrist. Boys know I'm a fool, better use your look too. And don't up it if you ain't gon' bust it. Check my resume, I don't never play, never change lame. I'm the same goon every day.
Bump J would drop a series of mixtapes in the early 2000s, including Grimeyville and Grimeyville 2, in which he dropped a DVD with it. The mixtape pretty much detailed his life and things that he had been through, and this was actually before he had his deal. Him and his guy Sly Polaroid was going crazy at the time, and this is what really turned up Chicago.
I met Sly. Sly was around my he got a little tip around where I used to go to school at.
Bump ended up meeting Sly through mutual friends. Bump was actually going to school in the neighborhood where Sly was hustling at. Bump used to like to rap and Sly did too, and he was told to go over to where Sly was at and spit some bars, see who had the best. Bump ended up going over there and killing the scene for that day. Sly didn't rap, but they would eventually link up again through a guy named Maestro. They would both start going to his studio. They would begin to get closer and closer after going to the studio so many times. They would eventually start getting on tracks, killing shit.
Y'all know Bumpy Johnson is a Chicago realer. Sly Polaroid, Chicago realers. Y'all can't mess with that, you know what I'm saying?
At first, Bump was reluctant to get on with Sly because Sly was a Titanic Stone, and the Titanic Stones are the ones that killed his brother.
He a Titanic, I'm a foe. We really ain't even supposed to be getting down. The Titanic's killed my brother.
The relationship that Bump and Sly had was much bigger than just some street shit. They was actually cool to the point to where Sly ended up taking a bullet for Bump.
When him came about, it's like I say, you know, people ain't used to clicking like this. Sly Stones, you know what I'm saying? The Stones killed my brother, you know what I'm saying? And at the time, that's when me and Sly really started fucking around heavy. And it was like, we always knew each other, but we started really fucking around heavy like that, like, you know, sleeping together, eating together, shit like that, you know, before we know each other, what's up? Shake hands, this, that, and the other. But, you know, we started eating together, all that shit. Now we like a family, you know what I'm saying? Now they killed my brother, the guy from his side of the field, you know what I'm saying? But they ain't stop us from doing what we was doing, you know? Like we was, like, it was a little war going on with that whole situation. Me and him still kicking it together, you know what I'm saying? His people trying to get him to get me up, shot him in the leg, you know what I'm saying? Also trying to get him to get me up, but he, no, nigga, that's my people's now. Ain't nothing happening, you know what I'm saying? They pop him in the leg or whatever. So, you know, it's really meant for us to be together now. We blood brothers now. He shed blood for Bump.
Bump got his name from a movie that came out in 1998 called Hoodlum. It was actually based on the life of a Harlem gangster back in the day, a guy that ran numbers and did his thing in the streets. The name didn't quite stick, as Bump was still being called Buck Wild, until one time, Bump would come out the house with chicken pops. Ever since then, everybody would start calling him Bump. Bump would end up forming a movement called GOON Squad. This movement actually didn't start off as a movement. It started off as just guys being cool with each other, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because every time one of the guys brought some of their guys, they would be accepted into the GOON Squad. The GOON Squad would reach up to 500 members. Bump would use his influence in the streets to tear down the doors of the music industry. Bump would begin doing projects with people like DJ Drama and working with the greatest producer that ever touched the streets of Chicago, Kanye West.
Bump J, gangsta, Chicago, let's go.
#1 rapper in the streets in Chicago right now is Bumpy Johnson. He just got his deal.
Bump J signed a deal for $1 million with Atlantic. Now he had money and an army to go with it. The Goon Squad was probably the deepest thing in the city, and it was very different, very peculiar, because it had people from all over the city, damn near everywhere in the city, and it consists of all type of different gangs, and everybody came together, from foes, to vice lords, to stones, to breeds, to GDs, and probably all types of other shit. Bump J was the thing that was popping in the city, and it was definitely happening for him. His guy Sly Polaroid was also very requested out the city. He had a lot of people trying to sign him, and at the time, Sly ended up getting locked up.
I don't know how I did it, but you know, I got a deal. You know what I'm saying? Motherfucker to open the door. I was gonna kick the door down if I had to, but they hit me with $1 million. You know, it was nothing. Fans in them, Chicago version of the other one. I told y'all on the first one what Bump was gonna do. I don't know if y'all believe me or not. But you know, we keep them bangers on us. I ain't gonna show y'all right now, because the people has been real hot on us. But we keep them on it. I promise it will happen to your ass. Chicago version, nigga, go cop that. Something gonna happen to your ass on everything.
Goon Squad will begin to develop a reputation. This reputation will end up getting them banned out of the clubs. Bump J had people scattered throughout the city, so it was impossible for him to keep tabs. And when somebody did something, instead of them blaming the individual, they would always blame Bump J, because Bump J was the head of Goon Squad. Bump J was with the shits too. He never really made the transition from a street nigga to a rapper. But yet and still, Bump J made great music. He dropped his hit single and his biggest song to date in around 2005. The song was called Move Around. It was actually produced by Kanye West himself. The song will end up going national. It will be featured in the McDonald's commercial and the Madden 2006 soundtrack.
You know the game's about picking and choosing. You don't know when you won, you so used to losing. Move around now, move around now.
Bump J had been working on a full-length project with Atlantic called Nothing to Lose. This project would never come about because in 2006, he would end up leaving Atlantic. Then in January 2007, he walked into a Chase Bank in Oak Park with a handgun and left with a little more than $100,000. Bump would actually get away with robbing the bank. He would be told on by the guy that he took with him about 1.5 years later. And then he would end up copping a plea. Bump would end up doing 9 years in a joint. He actually ended up getting 2 degrees while he was in federal penitentiary. Bump J would touch the streets with a different mindset, with his connection still intact, but not having the same heart about music. Even though Bump J would drop a lot of music after he got out, he would really focus on his son, Lil Bump.
Cold-hearted, my nigga so heartless.
And he also said that the time that he did really helped him. It set him down and made him think. And a lot of people say that if Bump J would have never got locked up, Bump J would have got signed. I definitely believe that, because Bump J at his time was the best thing in Chicago. And he also influenced a lot of people in Chicago. Bump J started the king because not only did he have the streets rocking with him, not only was he a real street dude, but he also was one of the first guys in Chicago that brought the gangster shit to the music. And now, Bump J is still doing his thing. He's making music, and he's doing exactly what he wants to do. And I think that what we can learn from the story of Bump J is this. A lot of times, we just simply don't realize that what we're doing is contrary to what we're supposed to be doing. Bump J said when he got signed, he seen it as though he had hit a lick, and he never had any intentions on getting out of the streets. Later on, he would then say that he should have left Chicago, and I definitely agree with him. Bump was lucky. He was one of the ones that ended up getting a second chance, and he'll always be a legend in the city of Chicago. Shout out Bump J. Shout out the Goon Squad. This has been another episode of Chiraq Street Legends. It's your boy, SNTV.